Sorry about that. Yeah, thanks, Veronica, for the great introduction. Certainly a lot to cover in a short presentation, so glad you broke that down a bit for us. And now I'd like to introduce our guest speakers for today, Belinda Joyner and Naeema Muhammad. And I bet some of you are already familiar with these two amazing ladies. Belinda grew up in Northampton County and has been involved in numerous local environmental struggles. She's worked for a long time trying to expose the industries who thought they could turn her community into a dumping ground. Well, clearly they didn't know that they'd have to reckon with Belinda. She founded the Concerned Citizens of Northampton County and has been an effective organizer against many threats, including a liquid fertilizer plant, hazardous waste incinerator, private prison, and the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. Belinda has been working with Clean Water for North Carolina for the past 20 plus years as our Eastern organizer. Naeema is no less a force for the communities that she works with. In 1981, she was a founding member of the Black Workers for Justice, a community-based organization that addresses workers' rights in North Carolina. Since 2001, she's served as a community organizer for the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network, where they are leading statewide efforts and supporting grassroots movements for the environmental and social justice movements. Since 2014, she has served as the organizing co-director of the NCEJ network. Some of you might already be familiar with her work as a community organizer, working with folks living next to industrial hog operations. On behalf of these neighbors who suffered from the unjust waste management practice of the Lagoon and Sprayfield system, she's played a key role in a Title VI case between impacted community members and Smithfield Foods. You'll be learning more about this and other issues today as we listen to Belinda and Naeema, two friends fighting for justice for overburdened communities in North Carolina. We hope to learn a bit about how the Civil Rights Act and environmental justice policies can be used to protect communities, as well as where they have fallen short and must be strengthened to amplify the voices of the people who are most impacted by polluting industries. Welcome, Belinda and Naeema. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you for having us. I'm glad to be with you.
I would just like to say hello to everybody. And I looked at the chat and I saw so many familiar names. And I just thank you all for tuning in and that support that you are showing to us today. It means a great deal because this is where we got where we are. I am Belinda Joyner and I live in Garrisburg, North Carolina, in Northampton County, and I refer to it as a dumping ground. We had a commissioner who has passed on. His name was James Boone, and he was a true commissioner. And he told me years ago that being that we're right off the corridor of I-95, that everything that they wanted to put in, that, you know, this is where it would be. Now, the eastern end of the county is a lot of farmland, but when you start, I'd say from Garrisburg to Gaston, that's where it stopped, because if you go further up 46, you have Lake Gaston, and we know that, you know, they're not going to put anything up on Lake Gaston. I remember years ago, a gentleman wanted to put a car wash up there just to subsidize his income, and because it was Lake Gaston, he wasn't allowed to do that. But my first question, I just want to give a little food for thought that, you know, maybe some of you have not been. How familiar are you with your local elected officials? Just how familiar are you with those people that make those decisions as to what's in your community, what comes in your community? How familiar are you with them? And I'll tell you why I asked that question a little bit later. But getting back to Northampton County, I live 5 minutes from I-95. We have an Enviva plant. We have a Smithfield hog farm. We would have been home to the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. We have a Lowe's distribution center, and I do have to give credit where credit is due. It's about 2 miles or so back off the highway. It's not bothering anybody. We have a lot of people that's in this community that do have jobs. It's a distribution center, so they send stuff out to the Lowe's stores, and they're doing what I would think, you know, is not harming the community. They're not putting out any pollution, but we have, like I say, quite a few community people that work at Lowe's. So I can appreciate that. With the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, it was a fight. And a lot of people on this call were part of that fight for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. And I take my hat off to many of them because they've been here and they know they've been to Northampton County. They've worked with us. They've seen what's going on here. And without people coming together to fight, we wouldn't be where we are. And I have to go back a minute to some 20 some years ago. I had a cousin and we used to have a truck stop right off I-95, and he just happened to be in there one night and heard some people over talking, and they didn't pay him any mind because he just didn't look like anybody that was important. But little did they know he was one of the smartest men that lived in Northampton County. His name was Charlie Garner. They were talking about Thermochem, which was a chemical plant, and they were planning to build this plant right here in Gettysburg. And being that he was there and overheard what was said, the next day he came out in the community because he's well known, and he started talking to the community members, and we started organizing, and we got a petition, and that's how we don't have Thermochem here. They wanted to put Wackenhut Prison here. Again, we fought that. Right in my backyard a few years back, they wanted to put a liquid fertilizer plant there. We had to fight that off, and I'm saying literally in my backyard. But I have to credit the Environmental Justice Summit Network for a lot of what I know. I've heard a lot of things. But when Hurricane Floyd came, Princeville was washed out, and a lot of the community churches and people, we were taking donations down to the Brick, where we have the Environmental Justice Summit. And I met this lady named Judy, and she asked me, did I know about the Environmental Justice Summit? And I said, no, I've never heard of it. So she invited us there. And it's been 21, 22 years, and I've only missed 2 meetings because that's where I really, really learned how to fight injustices, because we had people from all over the world. We had a connection. I had Naeema, I had Gary Grant, I had Steve Wing. These people did not mind fighting. They did not mind showing you or teaching you something that you didn't know. If you needed something, it was made available to you. And I will never forget Therese Vick. She's originally from Northampton County, and I was in one of her sessions. And we were talking, and she said, you know, you have a right to know. And I'm like, you have a right to know. And she said, anytime you go to a county meeting or a commissioner's meeting and you ask them something and they don't tell you, you can file a lawsuit because you have a right to know. Well, at that time, we were fighting a landfill right down off I-95, Capstone Paper Company. And when we went, it was a bunch of us there. At one time, we were really strong in Northampton County. When we showed up in numbers. I mean, we packed the house. We even got it where our commissioners were meeting during the day. We even got it where we would have one meeting at night because people work during the day. If you work during the day, you can't attend the meeting. So a lot of stuff went on that shouldn't have gone on. So we fought to get that night meeting. And when we showed up, and they was like, you know, all of you are here. What you doing here? And I looked at them and I said, you do know we have a right to know. And right then, everything just flipped. Can you meet with us after the meeting? So I attribute a lot of my strength to the environmental justice and being with Naeema. People that's not afraid to speak up and to speak out. It's just been a true blessing. And the connections that I've made down through the years have made it even more exciting. So with Northampton County, I say a dumping ground because the Atlantic Coast Pipeline was really scheduled to go through Raleigh, NIMBY, not in my backyard. When they looked at the demographics and the golf courses and this, that, and the other, you know, oh no, we can't have this here in our community. That would degrade our community. So we had a economic developer named Gary Brown, and he talked with them, and they just, they souped them up. You know, we're going to give the county this amount of money. We're going to give the Board of Education $2 million, on and on. And we would have also been home to the compressor station, which is, like I say, right in our community again. So we were in what we call a high consequence or blast zone, which didn't matter to them. And Hope Taylor, Erica, myself, and William Barber III, we walked that community twice, going door to door, giving out information about being in a blast zone and the pipeline. And a lot of people were not familiar because they could look right out of their yards and see the pipes right in their backyards, you know, these big blue pipes. And one man, when we talked to him, he was under the impression that, I can, tap on and I can get some natural gas. And I'm like, no, sir, that's not for you. If you have a big company like Lowe's, or if you live down on the coast in Virginia, now they had two types of gas. They had the gas that they were going to run through here and kill us dead, and not to say that it wouldn't kill the people in Virginia, but it had a different fragrance wherein they could tap on and use it in their home as natural gas. But here I'm looking at it right in these people's backyard, and they couldn't do that. So when he really found out that he couldn't do it, he was really furious, and he had some charged words to say. And but without education, without knowing, this is why a lot of things happen. And that's why I asked that question earlier. How familiar are you with your local officials? Because the first time that I went to a economic development meeting, and this meeting has been going on for years, and a friend of ours, we went, and they were so amazed that, oh, you all are here. We've never had anybody from the public to come. And I'm saying, okay, this is where all of this come in at. The economic developer would go out and supposedly bring economic development, good jobs that's not harmful, going to pay you a lot of money, which is just a lot of hogwash. But anyway, that's their job. And we was paying him $90,000 a year. So he went out, and this is what he did. Then we had Vista Green, a company that bought 825 acres of land right down in Seaboard. Again, some farmland, but then people that look like me lived there. Well, some of the adjacent property owners, the letter went out prematurely, and that's how we found out about it. They wanted to put a recycling coal ash plant there. So when we went before our board of commissioners to confront them about this letter, now we sitting in the commissioners meeting, we had 3 people there that had letters that they had received in the mail. When our NAACP president, Tony Burnett, confronted the commissioners about this letter, at the end of the meeting, they have their say, and they just were so ugly to him. You just coming in here, you lying, you just causing confusion. That's not true. And I think it shocked him so bad that he couldn't respond right at that moment. And I'm saying to myself, Tony, you got the letter, show it to him. But I couldn't holler it out in the meeting. So when we came out of the meeting, I'm like, Tony, you had the letter right there. You didn't write it. They did. Why didn't you show it to him? He said, but I'm just so shocked at the treatment, the way that they disrespected me, saying, that I'm causing trouble, I'm lying. Well, guess what? We found out that they knew about it 6 months before we did. So we knew that they were not there for us. So what we did when election time came, we voted every one of them out. And now we have a whole new set of commissioners. And that's why I asked the question, how well do you know your leaders? Because they're the ones that's responsible. We want a call or a public hearing with DEQ about the biomass down in Duplin and Sampson County. And one lady said, how did we get picked? And I'm like, oh my God, I was on pins and needles, but you can't speak until your turn comes. And so I guess 5 or 6 more people spoke before I did. And so when I got to it, and I'm like, I hope this lady is still on the line. Ma'am, you just didn't get picked. This is what your economic developer did for you all. He went out, and either they contacted him or he contacted them. And that's how it came to be. So I started urging our people to go to our planning board meetings, to our economic development meetings, and to our commissioners meeting. And we started packing the house. And when we got to so much is in Northampton County. When we got to the coal ash recycling plant, this man lived in Bertie County, but he had did an interview with our Daily Herald newspaper, and he said, why not Northampton County? So when we had our public hearing with them, it was so many of us that they had to do it in 3 sessions. So my question to him was, you stated in the paper, why not Northampton County? Why not Bertie County? And he said, oh, do you have a railroad right here, and they can bring it right to the railroad? And I said, well, sir, when you have that type of money to buy 825 acres of land, if you pay CXX, they'll build a railroad right to your door. And then you can put it there, because we don't want it. So these are the things that Northampton County has been up against. In Viva, we're still fighting. CNN did an awesome job when they came here in May. They kind of put some stuff out there to make our people come out and really say what's what. I had confronted our former county commissioner chairman years ago about the incentives that they gave in Viva to come here. And of course, you know, I was wrong. I was the bad guy. I'm trying to cause trouble. Well, when CNN came, they talked to who now is our economic developer, or the county economic developer. And he said that when Enviva came here, they gave them too much of incentive to come. We are a tier 1 county, meaning that we are very poor. Our population, the predominantly people look just like me. We are 22% below the poverty level. We are paying, because of Enviva, 6% property tax. Now, we are tier 1. So now we're the 3rd largest county in the state of North Carolina that's paying that kind of tax. So you can see that environmental justice, environmental injustice happens to people that they feel like can't do any better. You know, they don't have anything, so we can just give them anything. They can take it and you know, just be quiet and be glad that you got it. But I thank God for a voice. I thank God for people that came together, that came here, that helped us. And then we got together in June of 2019. Bishop William Barber was here at our community center. We had people from West Virginia, we had people from Virginia, and of course, North Carolina. And at the end of that meeting, we got together and had a meeting, and we formed a tri-county, tri-state strike. And we went to Roanoke, Virginia, right on the grounds of Wells Fargo's bank, because that was one of the banks that was supporting the pipeline. And we had a big strike out there, and it was awesome. I mean, we had people from everywhere. So, you know, I look at John Wagner, Bobby, Lib Huxley, and Hope Tell and Rachel, and all of us, you know, like I said, it takes coming together and working together for a cause. Now, the last environmental justice meeting we had in 2019, Mike Sprayberry was there, and he was the county emergency management person, but he's retired recently. And he was in the meeting, and I asked him, I said, Mr. Sprayberry, can I ask you a question? I said, now, you know, we're in a high consequence area of what we call a blast zone. Should we have an explosion, how long would it take a hazmat team to get to Gettysburg? And he looked at me and said, 90 minutes. And I'm like, 90 minutes, that's an hour and a half. So now, if it takes you an hour and a half to get there, what do you think you're gonna find when you arrive? Because we have a volunteer fire department. So just say, for instance, if the fire broke out at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm at home in my bed sleep. I'm a volunteer fireman. I have to get up out of my bed, get dressed, go to the fire station, suit up, and then proceed to wherever the fire might be. So that's how many minutes that I've killed. And then you think another 90 minutes for somebody to get from Raleigh to here. You know, it would be a hazard. All you would find was charred bodies. But at that time, they didn't care. All they was doing was profit over people. And that's the way I look at it, as being profit over people. But thank God, I got an email from Karen last year on the 4th of July. And it said the Atlantic Coastline Pipeline has been canceled. And I'm looking at them like, is this for real? Mm-hmm. So I read it again. And then I emailed her back and said, you know, is this for real or is this true? And she emailed me, you know, yes, it is. And I just went through my house hollering and jumping and streaming. And so, like I say, I thank God for these groups that have come together to help fight for people of color, poor communities. And when I look at DEQ and DAQ, I can't, I'm just sorry. I've not seen anything that they've done for us. They've been here in my home. They were here last year in February. I took them out to impact the communities. I even took them to this lady's house, 80 years old, and Viva's right in her backyard. Right in her backyard. Mm-hmm. She can't sleep at night. She can't come out and work in her flowers. And when we met with Michael Regan last year in February, and we had the hearing in August of 2019 for an expansion, 45 million, and Viva gonna pay $45 million to expand. And I said to him, I said, we had about 40 some people that was in in opposition of the expansion. So why was the permit granted? And he looked at me and said, As long as they're in compliance with what the law said that they should be, then we have to grant them the permit. So my next question was then, well, why have a public hearing? That's a waste of time. And so then I was told that they would use those comments to strengthen the permitting process. So my next question was, well, when are you all gonna start? Because I've been in meetings with Hope, Michael Regan for years, and nothing has changed. And as I'm looking at it now, still nothing has changed. They have just granted Enviva Title V permit. You got dust, you know, you can see it, people having to power wash their house every 3 months, wash their cars every 2 or 3 days. That's a cost to them. And then people say, oh, Enviva's doing this and they're our good friends, but what are they doing for the people that's directly affected, that lives right there? You know, you can give frontline workers a donation. You can contribute it to a food bank. You can give the school $200 or $300. But when little Sally gets asthma from breathing that dust in, are you going to pay her hospital bill? If I get cancer, are you going to pay my hospital bill? So know your local officials, go to your meetings. And I know now with the pandemic, a lot of things that have gone on that shouldn't gone on because they use that as an excuse for the pandemic and we can't meet in public. So I'm sure that a lot of things have been granted that shouldn't have been granted. But stay focused. The fight is not over. We've only just begun. And I'm claiming Jubilee, and I'm going to turn it over to my good friend, Naeema Mohammed.
Okay, thank you, Belinda. And good afternoon, everybody. And same as Belinda, I scrolled through the participants list and saw familiar names and was happy to see Sherry, Will, and Bobby, and Hope, Adrian Wilkie, and Adrian up there with my baby, had my baby with her, one of our new EJ babies, y'all. So I was glad to see her watching as well. Anyway, thank y'all for this program on this afternoon, and I hope you will find it beneficial and helpful. I join in with Belinda in the fight for environmental justice for all of our communities. Because we know that everybody deserves clean air and clean water. Those are basic human rights. That's not a privilege, it's a human right to have clean air and clean water. And so we're fighting for that every day as we fight with our communities to protect themselves and to stop all of these dirty corporations from taking over Eastern North Carolina. And we specifically say Eastern North Carolina because if you look on a map and map out where everything is located, it shows that the majority of these dirty industries are in Eastern North Carolina, which is where we have a lot of our tier one counties. We have a lot of our um, African American communities, Native American, and Latinx people living in Eastern North Carolina. So we declare that this is not an accident that these things are located here, but we believe that it was intentional because of how these industries perceive people of color to be of no value to them and that our lives are not worth saving. And so we just, whatever we don't want, white people don't want in their backyards, then we'll just put it in Eastern North Carolina. And so we call this environmental racism. And again, we don't think it was a mistake, but intentional because they perceive our communities not to have the economic and political clout to fight them off. We know that as we look at even if we look at the state level, and many of us are aware of what's being done at the state level as we look at watch the news and we see articles that come out from Lisa Sword, who I think is an excellent environmental journalist, and I look forward to following her and listening and reading her articles. And I think that, we see that our legislators is on the side of corporations, and whatever corporations want, that's what they try to deliver to them. And they do it at the expense of the people that voted them in. And so I join in with Belinda when we say the one thing we have got to do as citizens in this state is to begin to really know who our representatives are and how are they representing us. And when we find that they're not representing us, we don't need to hesitate to vote them out of office. And so, y'all, I think all of us are aware that our state house needs a good cleaning. I mean, we need a complete sweep through there because what's up there is just embarrassing to us as a state. All around the world is watching what happens in North Carolina, and it's totally embarrassing. But anyway, so Belinda talked about all of the environmental injustices that they've been faced with in Northampton County, and we've been partners working together now for quite some time. We don't want to give our ages out, so we just gonna say quite some time. We've been working together quite some time, and we find that these injustices that they're battling in Northampton County, we can go to other counties and we're finding some of the same issues. Like the industrial agriculture is not a one county issue; it's a multi county issue in eastern North Carolina. As a matter of fact, when we look at the history of industrial agriculture in this country, um, the top 10 hog producing counties in the country has been shown to be in eastern North Carolina, with four of the top 10 being Sampson, Duplin County number one, Sampson County number two, Bladen County, and what was it, Bladen, and I believe Wayne County is on that list as well. But there are the top 10 hog producing counties are in eastern North Carolina. And the problem with the hogs, I think you all may have heard us talk about this over and over and over. I feel like I done talked about it till I'm about to turn blue in the face from talking about it. But it's such an injustice to our people in the fact that you got almost 10 million pigs in North Carolina rather, and you only have about 9 million people, so we got more pigs than people. And the pigs are again predominantly Duplin County being number one, has over 2 million pigs, and Sampson County has right at 2 million. So just in those side by side counties, you got about a little over 4 million pigs per person to to 4 million pigs per person in those two counties alone. And the problem is the way they handle the waste with those animals. They have what they call a lagoon and spray field system. Well, I always tell people I am not talking about that blue lagoon that Brooke Shields was hanging out in. We're talking about a lagoon that's full of feces and hog waste. And and it's sitting out in the open environment in a lagoon this lagoon I'm talking about is about the size of a football field, and it's sitting out in the open air. There are no tops on them. So and then they have the hog houses where they keep the animals inside these confined buildings from birth to death, and they're on cement floors. Their feet never touch the ground, and they're kept there until they are taken, from the time they're born till they're taken to market. Um, and they have a piping system that runs from the hog house out to those open air lagoons. And so whatever those animals do inside those houses is falling through some slats in the floor and flushed out from those pipes, through those pipes flushed out from the hog house out to that open air lagoon. And let me tell you, if you ever want to um, deny that or claim that people are lying when they talk about how bad these things think, just take your ride down I-40, and you can drive down I-40 east with your eyes closed, and you know exactly when you hit Sampson County and then Duplin, because the air changes in your vehicle right away. It is so much stench in the air there until you can just smell it as soon as you hit those counties. And then you ride through the county, and you can see the hog houses. Sometimes you can see the lagoons from the highway, and you can see the spraying going on. Cause and so as I stated, it was the lagoon spray field system. The lagoon is what I just described. The spray field is when they take this waste. Once the lagoons are filling up, they have to empty them out in order to prevent them from overflowing. And so they spray this waste out on the crops around the community using industrialized irrigators. And so they are literally spraying this animal waste through the air in these communities. And if there's any wind blowing, it carries that waste wherever it wants to carry it. And so it could go 5 miles if a good wind is going. But at any rate, once they start spraying, it is just an ungodly smell. You really wouldn't want to be nowhere near the area. And so people are actually living right next door to these operations. And the industry had at one point told the state that the waste did not leave the site that it was produced on. And, so I was like, and our legislators listen, I was like, how dumb can you be? Anybody that know anything about air and water already know there's absolutely no way you're going to control air and water. It's going to go in whatever direction it chooses to go. And so for you to say you can control it and it never leaves the site. So then they had some researchers that come down, not they as the industry, but the community had some researchers to come down from John Hopkins University a couple of years ago, and they did a study called the Pig Tubac study. And in that Pig Tubac study, they took the Q-tip swabs, like if anybody had the COVID test and swabs they was using to do the COVID test, where they took the Q-tip swabs like that and they swabbed the outside walls of people's homes, and the outer sides under the air conditioning unit sitting in the window, and just swabbed those areas. Then they took some Q-tip swabs and they went inside people's homes and they swabbed the top of their refrigerators, their microwaves, cabinet tops, tabletops, children's toys, and the walls, and they found animal waste. So if it's not leaving the site that it's produced on, how is it getting on my homes on the inside and outside of my home? And so these are the kinds of lies that our community members have had to live with, from this industry, and up against a government who listens to whatever the industry tells them, and they pass laws to protect this industry, and people are barely able to live. They can't go outside when they want to. They feel like I've had so many people tell me, Naeem, I feel like I'm negotiating with the air. I have to open my door just a little bit to see whether or not it's stinking outside. If it's not stinking, then I rush out to do what I have to do so I can get back in before the odor comes, because when the odor comes, you do not want to be outside. And then, people don't use their clotheslines anymore. So they do their laundry and they have to either buy a wash and dry or they go to a laundromat versus just washing your clothes, stepping out your back door, hanging them on the line, at very low cost to people. But now people are having to invest in laundromats or wash and dryers, which is, again, these are tier one counters. People are on fixed income and these sorts of things. And so you don't always have it in your budget when you used to being able to just freely do what you do. You don't have it in your budget to start taking on these kinds of things, as well as people have been forced off of their wells. A lot of these operations are in communities where people were on well water, and they've been forced off of their wells because they don't trust the wells anymore because they started seeing changes in the well. People have shown me their water and you see it looks like murky and muddy and like dirt and grit and stuff is in it, and they and it smells, and it smells like rotten eggs and stuff like that. And so people are afraid to drink that water, and then they having to purchase enough water to do what they have to do. I know I saw one lady, I was at her house, she had gotten this certified letter from the Department of Water Quality at Wilmington, where she had gotten her water tested because she saw an article in the paper that said you could get your water tested for free. So she called them, they came out and they took water from the inside of her home. They took water from her well outside and they took it back. And about 2 weeks later, she got a certified letter telling her not to drink her water, not to cook with it, not to wash clothes with it. And if she had any animals, don't let them drink the water. And she did have puppies, a dog and some puppies, and they all died within a few months of each other. And these are the kinds of things that people are having to live with. And then in let's see, this is 2021, so I believe maybe let's say maybe around 2014, 2015, there was 500 people that got together from Eastern North Carolina to file a class action lawsuit against Smithfield, who's the owner of the pigs in North Carolina. They filed a class action lawsuit, which you might have heard some of. It was in the news, called the hog nuisance lawsuit in North Carolina. And under this hog nuisance lawsuit, they were able to file this lawsuit because of the nuances that they've suffered, the health impacts that they've experienced, and the quality of life, and the devaluing of their property, all of these things that we have been hearing people tell us over and over and over. I can't breathe, my eyes run, my nose burn, I cough a lot, I get nauseated, I get headaches. They people were just pretty stressed out. And and it was all of these reasons that were named in the nuisance lawsuit. And as the cases went forward, they broke the 500 people up into 26 groups, and the first five groups got heard in federal court. And in out of those first five groups, each group won their trial. They were jury trials, and each group won their trials and was awarded lump sums of money. And as a matter of fact, they were awarded 5 million in punitive damages and 70, well, I believe it was 75,000 in let's see, it was punitive damages, and I can't even, my mind going blank on the other one. Compensatory, that's what. So 75,000 compensatory and 5 million punitive damages. And the courts later, after the fifth trial, the court said that the punitive damages could not be that large because according to a law on the book in North Carolina, the punitive damages could not be more than 3 times the compensatory damages. And so it's just, that's been a battle. And the lawyers, of course, was appealing everything. But the people have been fighting for years against this industry and the damages that it's been wreaking on the communities and their well life, their right to enjoy their property, their right to clean air and clean water, their right to just be able to live. And I've been going in these communities for ooh, nearly 3 decades now, and you don't see the children outside playing. And people that live in rural America, they live there because they like the outdoors. Most times, that's why they live there. They love the outdoors, but you don't see people being able to hang outside because of all the, dirty industry going. You got the hogs, and then you got the wood pellets, you got the landfills, you name it, and it's there. the coal ash. Now we got this new thing with this Gen X, with this PFAS and stuff in the waters, killing everybody down in the Cape Fear River Basin. And as a matter of fact, I think I've even seen in some places where they talked about this stuff has been going as far as Chatham County. So I always say to people, you know, environmental injustice is everybody's problem. It is not just Eastern North Carolina problem. It's everybody's problem. And the reason it's everybody's problem because, we sometimes, we can think we safe, like everybody might have when we first started hearing about COVID, nobody was worried because nobody felt like they would be harmed by it. And then all of a sudden, we got this massive problem that's affecting everybody. And, so environmental justice is like COVID. You can keep quiet if you want to. Next thing you know, it's going to be up on your doorstep as well. And if you're a consumer, you're affected because you're eating this meat that's being ill raised. They feed these animals hormones and antibiotics on a regular basis, on a daily basis, to promote growth. So if you eating that meat, you consuming those products. And then we look at our children, wonder why they getting so big. These young girls with breasts bigger than, full grown women and stuff, and just children being so large. And the reason being, excuse me a minute. Sorry about that. But anyway, so now children are being oversized and growing up and developing much faster than they should. And that's, again, because, if hormones and antibiotics promoting growth in the animals, then it's certainly going to promote it in humans as well. And we know that when we hear about steroids and stuff, how that can cause people to bulk up, where hormones and stuff do the same kind of thing. But at any rate, it takes all of us, to address these things to try to prevent some of this stuff from happening. So the hog nuisance lawsuit was one legal way that the communities had for trying to fight back against an industry that was really destroying people's lives. And the second way that um, communities were able to fight back, as you mentioned, in coming on to the screen, a man and them talked about the Title Six. Well, Title Six is a tool that communities can use to file a complaint against any government agency that they feel have done egregious things to them, that's caused their lives to be really changed and impacted in a way that they shouldn't be. And so we filed a Title 6 complaint. We being the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network, representing all the communities that we work with, and the Waterkeeper Alliance, who are the gatekeepers to our rivers and streams and waterways in North Carolina, who's done an excellent job documenting the effects of these dirty industries on our waterways in North Carolina. And then the Rural Empowerment Association for Community Health, known as REACH, out of Duplin County, which is an organized community in Duplin County that's been working together to address the environmental problems that they're having in Duplin County. The three organizations came together, representing all the communities we serve, and filed a Title 6 complaint against the Department of Environmental Quality. At the time when we first filed it, it was called the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, and they later changed the name to Department of Environmental Quality. But we filed the complaint, uh, and we were able to show in our complaint all of the issues that I've already named as the reason we needed to file this complaint to represent the communities that were suffering. And we had 100 declarations. Those were statements from citizens in Eastern North Carolina that was being impacted by this industry. So we had them to give a declaration, and we recorded it and then added it to the complaint going into. The complaint was filed with the environmental protection agencies at the federal level, and and we were able to do that because under Title VI, no, a government should not be able to do business in a way that has disproportionate impact on low income communities of color. And we were able to show in whether it's intentional or unintentional on their behalf. Let's say they could say, well, we didn't know. Well, you might not have known, but that's your fault. You didn't know, because whether you meant to do it or not, it's done and it's damaged and it's a Title VI violation if you receive federal funding. And the Department of Environmental Quality does receive federal funding, so that made them eligible for us to be to file that complaint against them. And so that's what we did. And we were able to show that, it was through their permitting process for this pork industry, for all these pigs in North Carolina, that they were not taking into consideration cumulative impacts on people living nearby. They were not taking any Title VI considerations into, consideration. There were a number of things that they could have done different. They did not do, and as a result, it made them, vulnerable to the Title VI complaint that we filed, and so we did that. And out of that complaint, we wound up going into mediation with DEQ and reached a settlement agreement which we could all, agree to and say, okay, so if you do A, B, C, and D, then we can, we think that will be for the benefit of the communities. And if you do those things, then, we can all live together. So, at any rate, where are we, Rachel? Amanda, do I need to stop and give us time?
We are absolutely going to continue this conversation, but we want to give folks a chance to write their questions in the chat, and then we'll just take a short break and come back, and we can keep going with the conversation and maybe answer some folks' questions that they have. If that sounds good to everybody. All right.
Yes.
So we'll be back in about let's see, maybe we'll do just a 5 to 7 minute break. So we'll be back at about 2:15. Does that sound good?
Okay.
Okay. All right. We'll see you in just a few.
All right.
Yes, thank you all so much. Just make sure to put your questions in the chat, and we'll have a Q&A with Belinda and Naeema after the break. Thank you all so much.